What's up, guys? I'm Captain Mike, and welcome back to the Inside Scoop, your Florida Keys offshore fishing report. Here it is, October 3rd. What are we talking about weather-wise today here across the Keys? Look, expect it to pick up a little bit. It's going to go from 10 to 15 to 15 to 20. There's a small craft advisory in place for increasing winds, so just keep an eye on that. It's going to be a little bit bumpy, no question, from the northeast, but then it's going to start to clock around in a clockwise fashion to the east, ultimately to the southeast, south, before reversing course and coming counterclockwise early next week, back up to the east and ultimately to the northeast. So we've got some kind of changing weather patterns, obviously, not uncommon for this time of the year, but it's not stable by any means, so keep that in mind. And some of the days are going to be a little bit rougher, breezy whitecapping conditions, certainly by later today. However, early next week, it looks like it's going to come down a bit, and then it's going to pick back up toward the end of next week. So plan your trip to the Keys or plan your fishing trips here in the Keys accordingly, okay? What are you going to do? You know, here it is. It's the beginning of October. I would say the highlight, I have to be honest, start looking for the Wahoo. The full moon is in a few days, okay? And I'm telling you, there's some fish around. We've already been catching fish. There's other boats catching fish. Are they stacked up, multiples? No. But there's certainly some Wahoo around and definitely worth putting in the time and effort. The guys that are fishing offshore are finding the smaller fish, the Wahoos, mixed in with Dolphin around floating debris, under logs or anything that you find out there, well-formed weed lines, on the troll, throwing live bait. Some of those Wahoos always, meander around. But those bigger fish, the ones that we're really looking for, you're definitely going to find those in shallower water. Look for those Wahoo in anywhere from 80 to 100 feet on the shallow side. That may sound a little shallow to you, but don't be surprised. Don't be surprised when that 50-pounder smacks a bait right in 85 feet. So they're up there on the edge looking for food, working that entire strike zone. All the way on out to 250-ish, and somewhere in between there. Guys always say to me, hey, what's your favorite or what depth do you fish? And I'm like, well, the depth that is right for that particular day, right? There's so many factors. And sometimes you just can't fish where you want to fish. If I have intentions of, fishing in 150 to 170, but it's covered in eelgrass for the entire stretch, which is not uncommon lately, by the way. There's a lot of grass out there, a lot of grass. It makes fishing for Wahoo right now really challenging for guys that are trolling. Of course, there are other ways, live lining the bonitas, okay, with the tuna tubes. I mean, how exciting is that? You're going to see a lot more of that in the future. However, really a cool tactic. But the bottom line is, I don't care how you target them, if it's with the live bait, if it's trolling. And when you're trolling, look, come on, back in the day, even, I don't want to say back in the day, but even now, one of the most effective ways to catch Wahoo is trolling planers. You know what I mean? It's not only let me rephrase what I'm saying. One of the most effective ways to catch fish is trolling planers. It just so happens that a lot of those fish that are going to eat those strip baits are going to be Wahoo. They're also going to be bonitas, king mackerel, sailfish, blackfin tuna, dolphin. You just never know what's going to eat a strip bait pulled off a planer. So it's a fantastic tactic, something that we did a lot of and is still a staple up, especially off Broward County, okay? The guys, all of the charter boat guys, 2 trips a day, 4 hours each trip, running around in figure eights, pulling planers. But they rack up the score, and they catch a variety of fish. And like I said, it's a great way to catch Wahoo. So if you're planer fishing, high-speed fishing, maybe even, another great tactic, look, with the big trolling leads, right? How exciting is high-speed fishing for Wahoo? I mean, this is a fish that is capable of bursts of speed to 50 miles an hour. You're not going to outrun him. He sees that lure coming by. It's an instinct, boob. It's a reaction. and he just flies up there and smacks that thing. That's the cool thing about high-speed fishing, I believe, compared to some of the other fisheries, some of the other techniques that we use to target wahoo. I think that bite on the high-speed troll is the most incredible. But remember, the boat's moving forwards at 15 miles an hour, sometimes a little more, a little less. You've got here's a 48-ounce trolling lead from Diamond Fishing Products. Sometimes we pull them even bigger than this. And you're pulling a big lure, something like even one of these Zack Attacks. Their stainless series are some of our favorite wahoo lures on the high-speed troll. You could actually pull this bait with no lead, okay, with no trolling lead. But even with a trolling lead, it's going to allow you to pull that lure at a tremendous speed, which enables you to cover a lot of ground. It's about covering miles, right? The more miles you cover, the more likely you are to come across hungry wahoo. It's numbers, simple mathematics. So if I'm able to troll at 16 to 18 miles an hour, I'm covering a lot of ground, okay? So the high-speed trolling is really, really effective as well. The advantage of the high-speed trolling is it's really a directive fishery, meaning the bycatch is reduced tremendously. Do we catch bycatch on these lures? Yes, you're going to catch barracuda. We've had big king mackerel smack these baits, and I'm not saying that occasionally a billfish or a dolphin or a tuna, is going to, of course, it's a lure flying through the water. You're mimicking a wounded or escaping bait fish. A predator is going to eat it. But for the most part, the presentation is aimed directly at wahoo, and that's primarily what you catch. This is a very species-specific tactic, high-speed trolling, and very, very effective. We typically will fish 3 or 4 lines, typically 4, never more than 4. Okay, a lot of guys, I've seen guys fishing 6. Whew, you're gambling right there, boy. That's a lot of moving parts in the water, but if you've got the right crew and the right gear, of course you can do it, no question. But either way, only fish as many lines as you can manage comfortably, because the last thing you want is a giant mess in the water. All right, trust me, you don't want 3 or 4 lines all tangled together, especially with this type of gear on there. Okay, first of all, it's very expensive, time consuming to rig, not easy to replace, and it's going to put you out of commission sometimes for a long time if you get into, a big tangle when you're missing prime bite time. But the point is, with this October full moon, I highly recommend you get out there and look for these wahoos. The season, of course, is just getting going. It's only going to get better from here. These fish are staged up off the Carolinas, and as cold fronts and water temperatures drop up there, it pushes that bait south, and the wahoo migration follows the bait. So, of course, as the season and as the year progresses, all of those things are going to happen with greater occurrence and more intensity and push all of those fish down. I found that, of course, wahoo are not everywhere all of the time, right? Let's be honest, they're not everywhere all of the time. If there were, there would be none of them. It's a hard fish to find and fool. It really is. And to do it consistently, over and over and over, but the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. The more you're going to be able to read the water, to read the signs, to see what conditions, scream, you're going to catch fish here, you're going to get bit, and what conditions say, hey, go do something else somewhere else. And that happens sometimes. Some of the things, the presence of bait are really, really important. I've always found a direct correlation when I'm visually seeing flying fish. And on my Furuno fish finder, I could see bait stacked. I believe it's bonitas. That's what they look like. The bonitas are the footballs, the smaller squares that are vertically stacked, and always pays off, to be those little tuna type bullet species. And when I see those on the machine and I see that bait on the surface, that's a great sign, right? Because there's forage in the area. It's forage-rich waters. Wahoo are on the move. It's not a grouper who's hovering right on the side of a ledge and waiting for something to come by. This fish is moving. He's hunting. He's a predator. He's a skilled predator. Look at their body, right? They're an ambush, talk about ambush. Heck, look at that thing up there. You know, it's got a zebra-like pattern. It melts into the water. And it's equipped with this forked tail and these rudders with all these small little finlets that allow it to make these super fast moves, you know, right on the fly. Unbelievable acceleration, so they can catch and kill just about anything they want. Not to mention, look at their mouth, right? It's lined with razor sharp teeth. And if you really inspect that wahoo's mouth very closely, you'll see that the smaller teeth are in the front, but as they work to the back is where you're going to see your big incision type, you know, molars or whatever you call those big teeth back there. Because of course, right at the hinge, that's where all the power is. That's where the force is. So when they attack a bait and they attempt to cut off its propulsion by slicing that bait in half, it's back here where all that power is. But once again, even if it's, you know, trolling plugs, you guys know we really enjoy trolling the deep diving plugs. For 2025-26 here, this current season, we've upped the game. We're completely updated our spread, or let me rephrase it, improved our spread in a big way, and really anxious to share that with so many, you know, so many of you guys, right, who are joining us on our Wahoo courses, all of the Florida Sport Fishing TV Plus Elite members, you know, automatically included in these Wahoo courses. You're going to see this for yourself, you know, how this system really all comes together, you know, to work together to find and fool as many Wahoo as we can. You know, that's the bottom line. Really, really cool fishery. So again, I've spent way too much time on this species, but I'm crazy about the Wahoos. Moving further offshore in this report, there's still a lot of dolphin around, guys. This is like the never-ending year of dolphin. All right, if you go out there and put in enough time, you're going to find them. Guys are catching them on the troll, and certainly the guys that are fishing live bait are finding fish along weed lines. You throw a few scoops of live bait. Don't overfeed them, okay? Just enough to keep them all interested. Few more, you know, trust me, they're not going to go far. If you're throwing small little live pilchards in the water, the dolphin are not going to go far, okay? So again, you've got to put in the time. I'm not going to say you're going to go out there and in 2 minutes, boom, you're tight. No, obviously you've got to cover ground. You know, not every weed line, not every piece of floating debris is going to hold fish, is going to hold the life that you're looking for, but you'll never know if you don't get out there and bounce around, right, and put in that time. Certainly a lot of guys like to pull the rig ballyhoo. If you're going to do that, which is of course a great tactic, attempt to rig those baits weedless, okay? Because with so much scattered grass out there, having that bait weedless is going to save you some time, some effort, and it's going to put more fish in the boat. We prefer to troll the artificial lures like little Zack Attacks and the small and the extra small size. I have a lot of fun doing that. I'm able to cover a lot of ground, hook a few fish on the troll, bring them to the boat, where then we whip out the spinners, you know, the Chaos SP 15 to 30 pound class spinning outfit, 20-pound diamond line, monofilament in that case, and I just have a ball catching them on the spinners around the boat. Okay, so that dolphin fishing is still real good. I would start looking, you know, I'm going to say in that 700-foot range, but even shallower, you never know what you might come across, okay? You never know. Just the other day, we're running offshore, and man, it's giant floater right there in about 400 feet of water, you know? So you never know what you're going to find or where you're going to find it, so always keep your eyes open when you're out there. Blackfin tuna bite out on the humps, they're there. The fish are there. Go. If you can get out there, put in the time, you're going to catch them. Same thing. Go out there with blacked out live wells, you're going to catch them. This is probably the most surest fishing. You know, there are no guarantees in fishing other than there are no guarantees in fishing. But if there was something pretty damn close to it, I would say that if you can position yourself at one of these local humps, you know, offshore, you get out to the Isle Morada hump, and you start throwing baits in the water, you're going to have opportunities with blackfin tuna. I promise you. All right, they're there. I promise you. It would be impossible not to, I'm not saying catch any, but hook any. All right, it really would. So it's a really staple fishery. Some days easier than other days. Some days the blackfins tend to be bigger than other days. But plenty of footballs out there, plenty of action. Certainly worth a shot. If you can't get with the live bait gig going, small feathers, think I showed them to you last week. You know, nothing big. They work, a couple lines behind the boat, boom, you're gonna get tight. All right, it's really that simple. Sword fishing has been epic. A lot of really nice fish being caught lately. Some of the local guys that, you know, jump aboard other people's boats and, you know, all of the names that you're familiar with. These guys are really doing well. They put in a lot of time and effort. Unfortunately, we haven't been sword fishing recently, but certainly looking forward to getting back out there as quickly as possible. But that bite's hot. It really, really is. So there's no better time of the year. There's not a lot of fishing pressure going on down here right now. And when that window opens up, if you can get out there and go swording, you've got a great chance of hooking up. I mean, probably the best chance ever. Okay, it's such a staple fishery down here. Woods Wall, you know, certainly world famous. Obvious, okay? Anyone who can read a chart can find Woods Wall and be like, wow, that's where you're gonna find billfish, right? And it's no different for the swords. You know, it's all about structure. It's all about migration routes. You know, think of the characteristics of the fish itself, how it hunts, where it moves, what it does. Use all those factors to help you get more and more dialed in. But I can't stress enough how exciting that sword fishery, you know, like I said, really is. I just want to mention, you know, that along with a lot of the bigger fish, there's a lot of smaller fish mixed in too, little juveniles, pups, you know. Handle those with care. Obviously you will. They still have a very sharp bill, so be careful when you grab them. Try and minimize that harm. There's nothing like watching a juvenile swordfish swim away. I'm telling you, releasing fish, I mean, look, obviously if you're an inshore guy and you're fishing for bonefish, tarpon, you know, all of that kind of stuff, permit, you're releasing fish left and right. It's what you do for a living. It's what you do for fun. If you're an offshore guy, you know, short of fish that are out of season or whatever, but you're never really happy to release fish, right? Juvenile swordfish is like such a joyous occasion to release one of those because first of all, you went out, you did it, you found them, you fooled them, you hooked them, hungry, aggressive little fish. He fought like crazy coming up. You knew he wasn't a big fish, but either way, you had a swordfish. You did it. You were hooked up. And then they come up and you know it's not a keeper. He's 40 something inches, barely breaks the 40-inch mark. And you're like, you know, and you handle him and you unhook him and he's all lit up and still vibrant. You know, you could see he's still like full of life because he didn't have this multi-hour fight coming back up to the boat. You basically hauled his ass to the boat. Let's be honest, with either an LP or a hooker, you know, it wasn't a drawn out multi-hour, you know, head-to-head battle, not with a little baby swordfish. So he's still full of life and full of colors, like electric, glowing in purple. And you unhook him and, you know, there he goes, just melting into the water and swimming away. And, you know, already you're having visions of, hey, when that fish is 500 pounds, I may have another shot at that fish. You know, I hope you go on and live a big productive life and make a lot of baby swordfish for me to catch, right? But I'm telling you, such a magical experience, you know, sword fishing is. I used to do it at night. We used to fish a completely different way at night. That's where sword fishing, recreational sword fishing started down here in the Keys. You know, go fish 4 rods, right? With jugs or, you know, milk cartons with a glow stick to act as a balloon, an illuminated balloon, or even balloons with a glow stick taped to the top of it. And you'd go out there and drift at night. And, you know, your 4 balloons are set or 3 balloons and a tip rod. And boy, I'll tell you, it's so exciting. You know, it's visual too, because sometimes that balloon just goes completely wacko or it disappears, you know, so it's certainly like a strike indicator, right? But you hook a fish at night out there. It's really cool. A lot of stuff comes into light because we also illuminate underwater lights, you know, to attract attention. Remember, it's the ecosystem, the food chain. We're trying to attract the forage to the boat by means of squid, okay? That's really what we're trying to do, is attract squid to the boat, to the light. And then, of course, what's gonna be hot on the tails of the squid are gonna be the swordfish, right? Out around the perimeters. So much so, not uncommon for swordfish to come right in the light. So here you are drifting at night and you've got an illuminated green orb around the boat. It's, mostly what color everyone's doing. And right at the corner of your eye, you see one race through the light. You're like, whoa! And then a few minutes later, boom, you get bit. That fish was feeding. He was in the light chasing squid, found your bait, and it all came together, and, the game was on. So nighttime fishing was so cool, especially because you had long drifts and you didn't have to, man the wheel, so to speak. Like daytime fishing, that boat is constantly on the move, right? We're stemming the tide, so to speak. We're holding that boat into the current, and how fast or in exactly what heading is going to vary on so many different conditions. But it's a very interactive type of, fishing, of daytime sword fishing, controlling that boat. At night, it's more of set it and forget it. We go up, we know exactly what direction we're going to drift in. We want to cover, this 10-mile stretch of productive water, okay? And we know we're either meandering slightly inshore or offshore, but we're obviously going from south to north with the Gulf Stream currents. So it was all just a matter of positioning the boat properly. And once you had that position and you set your baits, you literally just drifted up that entire line. Okay, and then at some point, if you didn't get bit, you picked up, you ran back down the line, whatever it was, right? Every scenario is different. But it was a different world at night out there. A little spooky too, because you're in the shipping lanes. So you've got freighters. But with today's technology, with our Furuno TZT XL, with the radar, the solid state radar, I could see a freighter 96 miles away. Okay, some ridiculous distance. And I'm good. So we've got safety on our side nowadays, more so than ever before, even with AIS technology, all sorts of stuff. Night vision cameras, okay? If I want to see what's around me, I just turn on the black oak LED, and it's like daytime on my multifunction display. So that's something I'd like to get back into a little bit more in the near future. We've got such a great opportunity here in the Keys. And I haven't taken advantage of it because I've been so focused on the daytime fishery, because that's really the whole frontier, right? The latest frontier, and so effective. And why fish at night if you can fish during the day? Well, that's a great point, but it's just a different experience, altogether. It's a completely different experience. So, I don't know. We'll see if we kind of get back into that. Guys, also, I want to touch on, I know this is a little bit off the subject, but I want to touch on maintenance of equipment for a second, okay? Because this is a great time of the year when, you maybe get blown out for a few days, or, I don't know, there's a stretch of bad weather and you're just, twiddling your thumbs. It's a great time of the year to take care of tackle. If it's that big game tackle for the sword fishing we talked about, if it's your Wahoo gear, or if it's spinning outfits for Dolphin, or the stuff that you're fishing the reef, with. Whatever it is, take care of that tackle. And it doesn't take much. Look, I'm not very handy with tools or anything. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm really not a very handy person. But I do some basic maintenance on reels that really just keeps them working, keeps them operating, and then I have them serviced professionally when I need to, especially things like my Tiagras. But as far as like spinners, I typically just remove the spool, remove the handle, and using some sort of like multi-purpose lubricant, corrosion-resistant lubricant. Look, still a lot of grease in there. I grease the inside of the spool, with a little bit of a heavier duty grease the top of the spool. A little bit of grease inside the nut up on top there. Same on the shaft. I loosen these little screws, and again, just using, like a corrosion block, I'll douse it all inside there, or lubricate all of these moving parts, take the handle off. This is not rocket science. I'm not disassembling the reel, okay? Because if I open that reel up, there's all sorts of little parts and springs, and I'm telling you what, if I do that, I'm gonna mess up the reel. All right, so I'm not trying to do a full service, I'm just trying to do a basic maintenance, right? And by lubing all of these moving parts and spraying everything, and when I tell you I spray it, I like literally spray it down, and just grab a microfiber towel and wipe them all down, and just, lube all those parts. I'm telling you, it's gonna make a big difference. Your tackle means a lot, okay? It really does, every time we go out there, you're like rolling the dice because you never know when that one opportunity is going to come your way. And catching these trophy fish, beautiful fish offshore, it's such an honor, such a privilege, but it's also so challenging, right? A lot can go wrong. Premature tackle failure, angler failure, fish might not bite, whatever it is. But when you do have that shot, the last thing you want to do is lose a quality fish over something that could have been avoided, something that was your fault, that you could have easily done. You know, whatever that is. Maybe the spool got stuck open, or I don't know, so many different scenarios, right? A guide broke on a rod because the foot was really corroded and you never spent the time, you know, to clean or lubricate these guides. Same thing, a little corrosion resistance right on there. This, coincidentally, talk about broken tackle, broken tip, okay? I tried to repair it once, but ultimately, you know, happens to all of us. Look, if you fish enough, if you've never had a broken tip on a rod, then you're not fishing enough, or you're not fishing hard enough. Obviously it happens. So you've got to just look at the tackle, service it regularly, keep it in the best condition possible. That's going to keep you tight. So let's get back to the fishing here. We talked a lot about offshore. The deep drop fishing offshore remains solid. The queen snapper bite is excellent. There are barrel fish out there, black belly rosefish. Of course, tilefish, grouper, all of that's closed. Interestingly, I hit up a spot just a few days ago looking for yellow edge grouper. It's a yellow edge hole I've got out there. Pretty reliable, pretty consistent on the yellow edge, and yellow edge grouper is open. However, unfortunately, or fortunately, any way that you want to look at it, my yellow edge hole was covered up in snowy groupers. And snowy grouper season's off limits. So by number 3, sending number 3 down on a descending device, I'm like, I got to get out of here. So never found any yellow edges. But remember, here on the ocean side, the snowies is closed, the tilefish is closed. So fish a little bit deeper, looking for other species further offshore. Working our way down and around. Look, Pulley Ridge is excellent. Guys, we're about to release a seminar, a complete episode of Captain Mike's rigging station on conquering Pulley Ridge with 3 rods, the 3 outfits that you have to have, okay, and why, and how you're going to fish them, and where you're going to fish them. If you're even thinking about going out to Pulley Ridge, you know, which we know the magical last frontier of angling here off of Florida. I mean, an amazing destination, okay, and within reach, either by private boaters or some head boats that fish out there. But it's all about preparation, and you've got to see these 3 outfits, okay? So that's about to be released on Florida Sport Fishing TV Plus on Monday. We've got an awesome episode of Florida Sport Fishing TV Live, which I have to go out of my way and say, my wife filmed this, edited it, did all of the music on her iPhone. And really astounding what she was able to achieve on just a phone. So I can't wait to share that with you, because it's an exciting project, you know, where we went out and just we're having fun. You know, that's all it was just having a good time out on the water and just capturing what it's like, what it's really like. That's what Florida Sport Fishing TV Live is all about. So thanks for watching. Get out there, get hooked up, keep an eye on the weather. Got some better days coming right ahead. And then again, it's going to go downhill by the end of this upcoming week. But hey, welcome to the fall. All right, here we are. This is what we could expect. And remember, it could be a hell of a lot worse. So I'm thrilled. It's like the Caribbean out there. Beautiful.